I let out a panicked yell and flung myself in the opposite direction of him. My feet caught on the chain between the manacles around my ankles. Oh dear. It sent me sprawling to the ground with a stunned moan.
The things I put up with.
Hey all you cool creatures. I'm Cryptid, welcome to the CryptidPlays YouTube channel. And today we are playing the demo of Sacrarium Pario, which is a visual novel, and the demo was created for the Yandere Jam of 2023. So yes, it is a Yandere visual novel. But what it is about is that a mercenary who expected to die or be sold on the black market after being betrayed has received the interest of a living god named Violo, and now each day is a matter of survival. Violo's fascination is infamously mercurial, and his eternal companion, Ivere, is not pleased with sharing his lover's attention. Death looms overhead. So does the threat of finding the men beneath the monsters. Will the mercenary survive? Will they escape? Will they stay? That is up to you. Now, if you missed the content warnings and trigger warnings, the content warnings include gore, human taxidermy, human dissection and vivisection, flesh monsters, body horror, possible death, Stockholm syndrome, dubious consent, unhealthy and toxic power dynamics. The trigger warnings include human trafficking, kidnapping, human experimentation, forced imprisonment, restraints, obsessive behavior, threats of verbal and physical harm, being rendered unconscious, child abuse, transphobia, ableism, chronic health issues, PTSD nightmares, mental manipulation, emotional manipulation, possible torture, possible starvation, possible choking or suffocation, possible unwanted piercings, possible limb removal, possible eye removal, possible lobotomy, possible transformation into a monster, possible rapid body decay, possible plants expanding through body. Wow, these are pretty bad. Possible being eaten alive, possible death of the main character, and possible falling in love with your captor scenario. Obviously, this is a game created for a mature audience. It is, it's going to be interesting, and I don't think any of this is going to be too graphic, but with all of that out of the way, let's get started. Alright. Oh hey, they actually list all of the warnings right here. By continuing forward, you acknowledge that you are alright with seeing the previously mentioned content and acknowledge that the team is not responsible for your self-moderation of content consumption. So, be aware, viewer discretion is advised. I personally am consenting to this as I play this game. So, if you don't wish to see this, perhaps this video is not for you. While I love the name Jaden, and I really do, I'm going to be Cryptid. You know what? Let's go with Moth, since it's asking for my first name. What is your last name? Perfect, perfect, perfect. Cryptid. Moth, Cryptid. My pronouns are... Perhaps let's do a they, them. Run. Waking up on a ship was nothing new, but this was the first time I did it in chains. Sluggish thoughts swam through my aching skull. My fumbling motions revealed chains binding my wrists and legs to the floor. They were heavy, and the manacles were tight enough that I worried about blood flow. Hazy memories resurfaced piece by piece. Each new recollection sent a dagger of betrayal straight through my heart. Not again. I attempted to sit up and fell back against the crates with a groan. My head felt like it was splitting in two, and past experience told me I had at least 2 cracked ribs. Ooh. A nasty bruise chafed under the tight manacles. Blood poured down my forehead and dried on my chin and throat. I remembered the bruise and the cut to my head. The enemy found my location sooner than expected and forced a melee confrontation. We still won that fight. Zhao. The name fell out of my lips like a curse rather than a plea. He had left quite the big knot on the back of my head. It took me 5 years to get comfortable with him, to gain the confidence to trust him with my back. And this was my repayment, a ticket to a fate worse than death, if the chains belonged to who I thought they did. Familiar runes were crudely carved onto the chain links. Drain runes. Drain runes bled magic users dry and were necessary if you wanted to traffic humans. I'd shattered more than a few of these in my career. In a way, it was no surprise that I'd end up in some myself. One doesn't make an enemy of the tourmaline ring and walk away unscathed. This was inevitable. They better have paid you well for this, Zhao. Hope it's enough to keep me from finding you. The anger festering within me gave me the strength to finally sit up. The cargo hold was tight, blood-stained, but not smelly. I had to be the only living cargo down here. Which was bad. These ships never had only one piece of cargo, so they were in an even worse place if they weren't with me. Upon examination, the runes on the chains were cheap and outdated. Reaching within myself to gather mana revealed I had a tiny amount still within me. I could also partially open my third eye. Opening my third eye sharpened my sense and alerted me to the fact that there were other people down here. The clattering of coins and cheery conversation indicated they were crew, not captives. Sometimes I wish I was able to completely open my third eye. This was one of those cases. I couldn't reach far enough with a partial opening. Instinctively, I looked up and around me. Elementals hung in the air. Small, brain-dead water droplets lazed around, carried around by young, rambunctious air elementals. Air elementals were difficult to control on ships. They were easily distracted by the water and the salt. Thus, they spread themselves too thin and became near brain dead. Man, I hope this music ain't too loud for y'all. I've turned down the music just a bit more, just in case. I think most of it was quiet enough for me to talk over, but I am sorry if there were parts where my voice didn't fully carry over. The bored little things latched onto my call in a near frenzy of excitement. I gathered the little energy I had left in me and offered it to them. Let me hear them. It took a bit of pushing and insistence to guide them the right way. Soon, those unintelligible voices became clearer. My vision became overwhelmed by what the elementals were showing me. 4 people around a tiny table, drinking and playing cards. They were all slurring the Trateau with a variety of different accents one could find in the Sacrarium Sea. I hope I pronounced that right. What do you think we'll get for them? Probably not much. Manolines sell well enough. Even if we cut them into tiny strips, all kinds of freaks will still want them. But aren't most of our clients Indosian at this port? They hate magic. Or is it Indosian? I don't know. We wouldn't be selling this cargo to them. It would be a waste. I'm betting the captain wants to sell them off to one of those masked folk in the halls. The foreigners. Other countries pay well for parts. And a mind-wiped bodyguard always sells well, especially if you leave its training. The group laughed a bit. But for real, I don't know why the Cap handed over so much coin for this one. Do you really not know who that is? The muscular man nodded and looked confused. He's here to hit things, not remember them. She patted his arm. That's Cryptid. The Cryptid. Top of the bounty board in the ring 8 years in a row. I saw the man's jaw drop. So, yeah, we don't gotta treat them like other cargo. There are people dying to get their hands on them. I wonder if Cap is going to do a torture rental. The hard part is making sure everyone gets a turn then. Cryptid has more than a few people who want them dead, after all. We're going to make so much money. The glee in all their faces made me sick. We might make enough that we don't have to keep snagging rats. I clenched my fists and bit back a growl. A rat meant a child. Children were popular merchandise since they were easier to abuse into compliance. If I can get up. I tried to stand, but I couldn't. People like this were scum and definitely had special places saved for them in the hells. My breath came out in embarrassingly pained pants due to my minimal exertion. Unable to move, I focused back on what the elemental showed me. Do we really gotta cut through that place? He lowered his voice down to a near whisper, which Cryptid did not while reading his line. A shiver ran down my spine. There was only one area locals called that place and refused to speak of. I know it's scary, but we'll be fine. The path we use hasn't had problems this month. Keep your head on a swivel all the same. Get compliant in that place and you get eaten by one of that thing's toys. The big man shivered and rubbed his hands up and down his arms. I'm not even worried about the toys. I'm worried about the ghost ships. Ghost ships? Ha! The other three laughed at him. Yes, the miraculous ghost ships where only the crew disappear while their cargo returns to shore. She hit the big man's shoulder. Don't be daft. That's only the tales our cargo tell amongst themselves to feel better. I've seen one though. A ring ship with no crew. Only shell-shocked cargo. And how old were you when you saw this? 7, but it was probably a cargo mutiny due to bad crew. It happens. Some people can't maintain control. Not every crew has Cap around to maintain our superior level of professionalism. The muscular man shook his head. I still don't like it. What? You scared that the creator and the creation will pop out of the sea, whisk you away? The other three laughed again. Shh, shh, don't say their titles like that, it's bad luck. You really are young. Green bloods like you will always get so worried about the false idols on Pario. Remember to pay your respects to the true gods and you'll be fine. Don't say that name either. Too many ghost ships, too many rotting monsters on the beaches. I don't want to die because you lot don't know how to be respectful. Respectful of what? Two assholes cursed by the divine. The bald woman got a vicious grin. Oh, don't tell me their actual names are forbidden too. Don't you dare saying that while we're in this place is asking to die. Oh no, whatever will I do when Violo and Vivera appear? The bald woman and her friends laughed. The muscular man slammed his palms down on the table. Now you've done it. He looked frantic. Calm down, lad. We've said their names plenty of times. Never had a bad thing happen. The muscular man shook his head and got up. Where you going? We just started the round. To pray for us. He was already making the hand motions for a prayer to the goddess of mercy while walking away. The rest of his table mates laughed and jeered at him before continuing their game. Enough. The view closed and I gritted my teeth. Deep in the center of the Sacrarium Sea rested an island surrounded for miles by blood-red waters. Those waters, the blood waters, were the prison that contained the deadliest living gods. This immortal pair haunted the dreams of children and sailors alike. The creator, he who destroyed divine law with his twisted creations. The creation, something built to mimic humans in an ungodly way. The pair sank hundreds of ships every year. When their creations died, they left acidic corpses on our beaches. Any sane sailor turned back the moment the water started to look even slightly pink. Only fools like those in the ring dared to actually cut through it to avoid civil guard patrols. I wouldn't need to worry about my fate once we're docked. I needed to pray that we'd dock at all. It was madness, and I was being dragged into it with them. For a moment, despair welled up in me. Betrayal was nothing new. It was a familiar song and dance. I'd gotten myself out of similar scrapes, but this had to be the most hopeless one yet. Trapped on a ship with armed traffickers while riding through the most cursed area in all the seas. It was a death sentence. Unless I could turn it around. I have not lived this long to die now. I felt around my soul and body, seeing what kind of magical reserves I had left. It was very little. The previous battle had drained most of my energy. Like before, reaching and gathering my power felt like physical agony. Only my years of training kept me from falling to one knee. I didn't need anything flashy. I only needed enough power to rip the nails out of the floor. I wrapped the chains around my arms until they became taut. My muscles and bones protested my pulling, but I powered through the pain. It took all of my focus to time bursting my energy with the momentum of the pull. I succeeded. The action had me falling back against the wall. Black spots danced along the edge of my vision and my legs shook. I tried to focus on making sure no one heard me. The ringing in my ears drowned out everything else. Steady. Steady. Each slow breath hurt like hell. Still, I persisted in the motion, careful to not breathe too deep. My ribs would resent the extra damage otherwise. While I gathered my strength to move, I collected my wits. I was stuck out at sea on a ship with traffickers who wanted me dead or gone. That traitor had stripped me of my weapons, and I had no allies for miles. Then again, I doubted I had allies at all. Relationships that didn't end in treachery were rare in my line of work. Not that it mattered. I had no way of reaching help at all. To make matters worse, we were heading into the blood waters. What could I do? Ooh, seeing as we don't have any endings in the demo, other than the dead end, I'll do all of these. I needed to give up. It was hopeless. I felt tears stinging in the corners of my eyes. So what if I got off this ship? So what if I managed to make it to a safe location? No place was safe. I'd eventually put my trust in the wrong person again and be in another bad situation. My desire for connection was a pathetic sight, even after being shot in the back multiple times, even after being left to die on more than one occasion. I kept trusting people like a damn fool. There was no point. My body felt heavy, and I lost the motivation to move. Everything was pointless. I didn't have time to react when the ship lurched. My poor balance sent me rolling across the floor. Only instinct had me bracing my feet against a column to keep from rolling anymore. Alright, I'm gonna see what the other choices bring. Since I assume this happens regardless. I needed to sneak my way out or die trying. I tried to remember anything I saw before going unconscious. If my memory was correct, there were emergency boats on the side. My body was weak, but I wasn't dead yet. Reaching into myself, I determined I had enough power to make the boat land in the waters quietly. I only needed to get out unseen. The hard part would be getting around their guards. With other cargo spread around, they'd be on high alert. Honestly, they'd probably be more on alert because I was on board. I observed the lanterns and candles, debating messing with them. No, that'd be too noticeable. If anything, it'd lure them in. I could use it as an ambush if needed. With a pained groan, I hauled myself up. There was work to do. If I managed to escape, it would be quite the boast to add to my sales pitch. I didn't have time to react when the ship lurched. Alright, I'm gonna go get the fight one now. I needed to fight my way out or die trying. I clenched my jaw and pulled myself up into a standing position. The chains on me were heavy and uncomfortable, but I had enough space to move around. I stared at the heavy metal on me, thinking of the ways I could use it as a weapon. Over the years, I'd come to prefer ranged fighting due to the lower chance of injury. But, like any merc worth their salt, I knew how to dance up close. Could I do it fast enough to prevent an alarm from going up? Traffickers tended to walk in pairs, too. I shook my head. Thinking about it forever would do nothing for me. The first awkward step hurt, but I forced the second. Kill them all and turn the ship around or die trying. That was the plan. I didn't have time to react when the ship lurched. My poor balance sent me rolling across the floor. Only instinct had me bracing my feet against a column to keep from rolling anymore. The sprain in my left ankle screeched at the impact, but I didn't have time to wonder if I'd broken it. Another lurch came from the other side of the ship. I flung my long wrist chains around the column and used them to hold on. Chaos reigned above me. Frantic screams and shouting echoed down the stairs. The sound of metal clanging against something unnatural rung out. The lurching stopped, but the fighting continued. I managed to pull myself behind a small gathering of cargo crates by the time the members of the crew ran downstairs. Frick, frick, frick! O Goddess of Mercy, grant me freedom from this torment. O God of Secrets, grant me your blessing to hide. People babbled and shouted at one another. No one even noticed that I wasn't where I was supposed to be. We're doomed! We're doomed! The sound of something heavy trotting down the stairs had new screams of terror rising up. A symphony of broken bones and thudding bodies took over. Unnatural, disturbing grunts and groans echoed from the beast mauling them. The gleeful laughter echoing above it all had me frozen in place. That's right, there's voice acting for the two living gods, at least partial. The voice was low and had a slight rasp, but there was a sadistic, playful quality to it. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 people left. The screaming began to die down into pained sobs. I didn't dare move from my spot. The man began to hum. The cheerful melody felt out of place with the backing chorus of people pleading for their lives. Let's see. Male, no diseases of note. No injuries of note. Emaciated form. Poor bone density. Not viable. I heard the sound of a blade ripping through flesh, cutting off a terrified scream. Female, unique blood condition. I recognize the type, but research is lacking. Viable. The sobbing increased into panicked screams. Something hauled the woman away. Male, impressive physique, decent health and bone density. Musculature could be used for ligament experiments. Viable. Please, no, no. The man's cries cut off as he was also pulled away. Please, please. The woman pleaded. Begging is pointless, silly scum. It's not like you've spared anyone in your life. What's it like? Do you enjoy being powerless? Is it fun? Does it make you think of your sins? Come now, tell me. I asked a question. The playful tone turned into something more dangerous. The man tapped his foot. Female, nothing impressive. Less than average health. Beyond stupid. Not viable. I heard the sound of something slamming against the floor. The sound of a skull caving in cut off her pained cry. Finally, intersex. Fascinating. Sadly, I finished that research some time ago. Unique bone disease. This is new. Fascinating. He clapped his hands with glee.
Fantastic!
Oh, what a wonderful find. You'll make for a wonderful case study. Viable. This one didn't even put up a fight as the beast hauled him away. I kept my hands clasped over my mouth. No one else was around. He'd missed me. If he doesn't sink the ship, I could get away. I could also try and sneak out to one of the emergency boats. The man was humming while moving through the cargo hold. I tensed when he passed right by me, holding my breath. To my horror, he looked right at me. His eyes were foggy and unfocused. Messy, dark brown hair framed a delicate face, and wide, blind eyes. Freckles covered tan skin. Unique gold-filled scars sprawled across his chest. He'd almost look like a mischievous angel if not for the blood splattered across his face and elsewhere. He scanned the area, and I could feel magical energy radiating off him. It felt like I was standing next to a white-hot flame. I pulled my own third eye shut to avoid his energy and hoped he wouldn't notice the remnants of my presence. My chest burned from holding my breath, but I didn't dare release it. This wasn't the first time I'd fought off a blind magic user. They tended to be prodigies due to their minds being able to process magic better. After all, their brain didn't need to produce or process visual feedback from magic. Instead, that extra focus went straight into their natural abilities. My limited abilities allowed me sharper senses and a keen awareness of danger. A completely open third was something for prodigies alone. His third eye will see me. Shit. Frustrated tears mingled with the sweat and blood on my face. I waited for him to address me, wondering if he wanted to torment me on purpose. Even though his third eye passed over me, he turned away. I let out a surprised gasp and cringed. He didn't turn back. I blinked a few times. My jagged breath came out as a particularly loud wheeze. No reaction at all. The realization hit me like a hammer. Blind and deaf. I breathed quietly, all the same. I couldn't bear to open my senses to check on the elementals. Even with my third eye closed, he was a beacon of power that pained me to even stand near. The realization that escape was possible had me shifting. I gathered my chains to pick them up off the floor. I then slid my feet instead of walking to avoid noticeable vibrations. Hello? I need to make sure no one is unconscious down here. Hello? If you're here, you need to tell me. I'll put you with the others in a more comfortable spot. He meandered through the cargo hold, humming the entire way. His humming grew fainter, and I took the chance to make my escape. I navigated the rocking of the ship until a sharp lurch sent me slamming into a column. The motion caused my head to hit a lantern, and I dropped my chains to catch myself. With terrifying speed, the man was in my area again, head scanning the area. He's really cute. This time, there was an air of focus about him. The passive scan earlier was nothing compared to his intensity now. He reached out his hands while moving. I froze in place, debating what to do. Was it the chains hitting the floor that alerted him? Was it me hitting the column and the lantern? His nose twitched with a sniff. Different blood. He let out a curious hum while moving. He was going to find me. I needed to do something. What happens if we stay quiet? There was nothing else to do. I couldn't fight him off nor go undetected. All I could do was wait for those blood-stained hands to find me. He explored at a casual pace. He overtook an entire crew armed to the teeth with weapons, magical potions, and magic users. He had the power to be casual. I stayed still and waited for the inevitable. He actually passed me at first, but when he took a step back to turn around, he stepped into me. Huh? The surprised little squeak would have been cute on anyone else. Here, it felt twisted and wrong. He whirled around in an instant, hands flying towards me. One of his hands tangled into my bandolier, staining it with blood. He tugged me towards him, eyes wide.
What?
A person? He blinked a few times in surprise. The hand not holding on to me reached up and brushed against my face. He felt under my nose, across my lips, and around my throat. A living person? Are you mindless? I can't see you or hear you. He cupped my face with a look of wonder on his features. I shook my head.
Truly an intriguing situation.
Oh my god. I love the voice they chose for him. An answer. Not mindless, only impossible to see. I felt magic push into me then, and winced. Magic entering your soul felt more invasive compared to magic pressed against your physical form. It's like pouring water into a pit. I can't sense a limit. The sensation pulled back and a manic grin split across his face. You are fascinating. I never would have thought I'd find such a treasure on one of these ships. Delighted laughter made my hackles raise. His hands dropped down and snagged my chains. Maybe luck likes me more than he says he does. It's been so long since we had a guest with such unique value. You are what I've been waiting for. Oh no. I feel like that's not a good thing, but I guess we'll see. His pleased smile became more deranged. You have to come with me. His magic exploded in my mind. It overstimulated my senses until I cracked. I sank deep into the void, only the man's delighted whisper breaking through. We're going to have so much fun together. I floated in the darkness for an unknown amount of time, sinking further into the past. Hold on, I want to see what happens when we make the other choices. I feel like this, in some ways, might be the more... I don't know if it's the best choice, in quotes, because it sounds like we might become a experiment, but affection-wise, maybe this is the best choice. Anyhow, I'm gonna go see what the other ones do, and I will be back. Alright, so we stayed quiet. Let's beg him. I swallowed my pride upon realizing what my only option was. I didn't know how he passed me the first time, but if he was going to check each inch of the space, there was no way out. I wasn't sure how to get his attention, so I did the only thing I could think of. My knees ached when they hit the ground. I pressed my forehead against his boot and prayed he wouldn't kick me out of reflex. Please don't hurt me. The words fell out of my mouth. I felt the attacker tense.
What?
His hand reached down and grabbed at me. He snagged my shoulder guard at first. His second hand grabbed at me, calloused fingers clawing around until they grabbed my chin. A person? A person? His attention wrapped around me like a vice. I recognized the mild tremor in the air as telekinesis. The feeling of dozens of invisible tendrils catching on my clothes and skin made me want to puke. You're a living person. He reached the hand that wasn't holding my face down to my throat, pressing 2 fingers against my pulse. You're alive. I just can't see you. Huh? My breath rolled over his thumb. Did you talk? I nodded my head. I can't find your mind. I can't hear you either. Despite that, his face broke in a vicious, gleeful grin. He let out a delighted laugh that shifted into disappointment. But you're on your knees. The little tongue that comes out, so cute. He's scary, but he is cute. Oh, are you part of the crew, begging like your pathetic little friends to survive? Cowards are the most disgusting thing. I shook my head. You're on your knees, so you have to be begging. The smile on his face took a dangerous edge. I nodded, then shook my head. Then I felt like an idiot because that made no sense. You're not part of the crew then? I nodded. I see. Still a coward, but not scum. He let out a disappointed sigh all the same. Is it too much to ask that interesting people also have a bit of fight in them? It's so boring when subjects don't have a personality to keep me entertained. Dry textbooks end up in the fireplace, after all. He pouted, but that pout faded into a grin. I'm not supposed to do this, but you'll make for an interesting study. His hands dropped down and found my chains. It's been so long since we had a guest with such unique value. You are what I've been waiting for. His pleased smile became more deranged. You have to come with me. His magic exploded in my mind. It overstimulated my senses until I cracked. I sank deep into the void, only the man's delighted whisper breaking through. We're going to have so much fun together. Alright, now I'll go see what happens if we fight him. Try to fight him off. My years of experience tried to decide how to handle this. A confrontation was inevitable, and this wasn't my first time facing a stronger adversary. I only needed to injure him enough to keep him distracted. I didn't need to win. I gripped the chains and waited for him to get close enough. Once he did, I snapped my body forward, swinging the chains towards his head. He caught them with one hand, completely ignoring the sounds of his hand breaking at the impact. His bones popped and twisted back into the right shape while he clenched the chains. What? He stepped forward, and I surged forward to drive my forehead into his nose. Huh? He let out a surprised noise. Headbutting a rock would have been more effective. The motion had me stumbling back. Only his grip on the chains kept me from falling over completely. I'd made my concussion worse. The look of pure surprise as blackened blood dribbled down his face made me feel better. He wiped it away with his spare hand. I watched as the blood on his thumb bubbled and grew into a long, dark, blade. Before I could react, he slammed the pommel of the blade into my chest. I wheezed in agony. A breath, a person. I almost fell to my knees due to the pain, but I stayed upright. I felt something tug at my clothes and skin. The familiar tremor of telekinesis had my skin crawling.
What?
A person with a mind that I can't see or hear. Isn't that a given since you're blind and deaf? He didn't respond. How? He sounded so incredulous. Then an excited smile slid onto his face.
Fantastic!
Fascinating, wonderful, fantastic. Whoa. He leaned in close. You have some bite, too. It's been a while since someone broke my nose. Well, he's a little odd. He giggled and pulled me closer to him with the chains. Want to try it again? Come on, struggle. I scowled at the taunt and shoulder checked him in an attempt to make space. Again, it felt like hitting a boulder. His pleased laughter made me cringe. Oh, this is a treat. He tugged on my chains. It's been so long since we had a guest with such unique value. You have to come with me. We're gonna pass out. I sank deep into the void, only the man's delighted whisper breaking through. We're going to have so much fun together. I floated in the darkness for an unknown amount of time, sinking further into the past. Soon, the unintelligible whispers turned into recognizable voices and sounds. Pain grew and grew in contrast to my body, which only felt smaller and smaller. The dark shadows began to form familiar colors and sensations. My body ached, and my limp arm hung at one side. I laid on the dirt ground of the barn, broken ladder beside me. All I could do was stare up at the hideout Jabari and I had made together. The perfect place to escape our parents, and the only safe place during the bandit raid. My young mind was crying and scared, wondering why my best friend had kicked the ladder down. My vague adult awareness recognized the desperate self-preservation. He had left me as sobbing, injured bait. I could do nothing but lay in a pained daze, pleading with the gods to save me. The bandits hadn't entered the barn. The civil guard had arrived faster than expected. The pain in my heart only grew even after my rescue. I could never find it in myself to forgive him. I don't blame us. That small wound tore into a gaping hole when the civil guard recovered my parents' corpses. Everyone in the village had looked at me with hollow pity then. A broken arm meant I could do no work, and I now had no parents to look after me. Like my friend, they had kicked me to the side. I don't want to see this. The pains of my past began to bleed into each other again. Each time I extended a shaky, terrified hand, daring to trust. A new wound gouged itself into my heart. Blind faith and hope for goodness sharpened into cynicism over the years. The wounds of my past tightened around my throat. My despair straddled me almost like a lover, tempting me to stop breathing to avoid the pain. I shook my head, thrashing and fighting back. Whoa, our room is nice. Whatever room they gave us, rather. With my first agonized gasp, my eyes flew open. The ceiling above me looked rather plain. Chipped embossings were overrun with vines. I traced my eyes along them while steadying my breathing. The room was dim and humid. My body felt heavy, bloated, and uncomfortable. Someone healed me magically then. Magical healing was always expensive, and unlike most people, I tended to have a severe reaction to it. Thus, I tried not to get healed that way if I could avoid it. My hands ran across my body, and I noticed thin manacles on my wrist. They were lighter than the ones from the ship, and a dainty-looking chain connected them. I reached inwards for my magic, but found nothing. No energy at all. I ran a thumb across the chain and groaned upon realizing I recognized the runes on them. The ones on the ship had been cheap knockoffs. These were airtight in denying me my magic. The groan forced me to take in a deep breath, and I coughed on dust and the overwhelming smell of lye. Just realized you might not be able to hear the music. It's pretty quiet here. Someone had washed the sheets recently, but this place still needed a good dusting. I sat up to look around. Something fluttered on the edge of my periphery. My head snapped over in the direction of the motion, and I braced myself for impact. Don't you dare scream. A tall figure sat near my bed. He looks like kind of a doll. Look at his hands. It was a man, but not the one from the ship. That man had been slim, almost tiny. This one was a mountain of muscle, barely contained in haphazardly tied robes. Long hair poured over his shoulders, ending in colorful tips. Unnatural golden eyes sat in a sea of black, glaring at a dagger. Painful-looking seams broke up the mottled gray skin. He looked like a monster you'd run away from. The sharp blade he played with didn't help the image. He stood to loom over me. He moved with a regal grace, reminding me of a lion ready to pounce. This one seems like the worst choice of the three, but I'm gonna try it first. I yelled and dove away. I took advantage of him putting the dagger away to move. He looked ready to kill me despite my being taken captive. Was he in disagreement with the other one? I let out a panicked yell and flung myself in the opposite direction of him. My feet caught on the chain between the manacles around my ankles. Oh dear. It sent me sprawling to the ground with a stunned moan.
The things I put up with.
I said not to scream. I can't do a voice anywhere near similar to his, but that's okay. The freak growled while rounding the bed. God, we're kind of mean. Thinking of him like that. His steps were quicker now. With inhuman speed, his foot slammed down onto my head, pinning me cheek down to the ground. I struggled, but his foot didn't budge a single inch.
Annoying.
How vexing. He brings in a mindless buffoon of all things, saying that it's valuable. The pressure on my head increased to a painful degree. I see no value here. Even if you're a little freak of nature, we can learn plenty from your corpse. Better than dealing with the many headaches you are bound to cause me. Before he could crack my skull like an egg, the door opened. I watched the ship's attacker enter and tilt his head. My sunshine, no! He pouted and hurried over, tugging the taller man off of me. Despite being able to pin me down, the tall man stepped away with only a light touch. He huffed about it, though. A host should not attack his guest randomly. At least have a purpose for the violence, my sunshine. I do have a purpose. I don't want to be a host. None of our guests have ever had long-term lodging in our home. The dungeons are part of the castle too.
My love.
But they're different. That is a workspace. These floors are meant for us. The smaller man sighed and clasped his hands together.
Oh, my sunshine.
Cute. I know. If you know, then move them. I can't. The quality of the dungeons could degrade our guest before experimentation. Not to mention time in the dungeon leads to short shelf life on harvested parts, too. I told you why our guest is important. You know we can't risk that. The taller man crossed his arms and pouted. My sunshine. No, you will not break me with a sweet voice. The smaller man sighed and turned to look in my direction. It took him a bit of time to find me. When he did, he pulled me up and pushed me back onto the bed. We will discuss this more later, my sunshine. The tall man sneered down at me. You're awake, which is good. Any problems with your vision? Odd spots? Shorter range? No, but it's hard to tell for sure in a dim room. Ah, right. My sunshine can see in the dark. He laughed and waved a hand in front of his face. I haven't needed the light in a long time. We'll have to make sure to brighten the place up. Must we? I'd rather our guest not break their neck walking around. So yes, Viv. Viv let out a disgusted grunt. No issues with your hearing, it seems. No, I hear fine. I'm surprised you can hear me. Wasn't I interesting because he couldn't hear me? I can't hear you. I can hear the air elementals I have attached to you, repeating what you say to me. My eyes flickered around me out of habit. My chains preventing me from opening my third eye meant the gesture was meaningless, which does make you so fascinating. I've never had to do this before. The small man stepped forward and grabbed at my face. Well, I have done it once before. A long time ago. It's quite the strain on him, too. Be grateful he deems you worth the effort. Not a strain, but an inconvenience. Elementals are a fussy, unreliable tool. The fingers on my chin trailed up my face. How do you feel? Be honest. Terrified? He said to be honest. There was no other answer, given the true horror of my situation. Two men living in a castle under a red sky. One of those men was called Viv. Viv had an unnatural, inhuman appearance. I licked my lips in my nervousness. Terrified? Whatever for? Unless... He cupped my face and leaned in. You've pieced together where you are. Such a smart little thing. It is not that impressive. Viv rolled his eyes. Only a fool wouldn't be able to piece this together. The pieces alone are screaming the answer. I'd say recalling and combining irrelevant information under stress shows their abilities. So I'm right? Well, you'd have to say it out loud first. I hesitated. Are you the creator and the creation? My mind went back to the running game children would play. The play creator and one play creation would chase the rest. The play creator would tag someone and sing a song to turn them into a creation. The play creation would then try to tag the new ones to kill them. The echoes of childish laughter and our play songs had me shuddering. He'll make more, he'll break more. The cycle never ends until we're all dead friends. Oh, that's not a very nice song. My hands were freezing despite the hot and wet air in the room. The smaller man laughed in delight. See, our guest did figure it out. Viv sounded less than impressed. Proper introductions are only polite. I am Violo, though you seem to know me as the Creator. Violo tilted his head in the direction of Viv. That sourpuss is the creation, Vivere. Or Vivere? Vivere? I don't actually quite know. Obviously. Violo finally released my face. Welcome to Pario. You'll be staying with us for some time. Violo clapped his hands together and gave me a big smile. If it was meant to comfort me, it had the opposite effect. You see, you are quite the fascinating find. Despite having mana of your own, your soul is a void. What?
The things I put up with.
Oh, please. Vivere tossed his hair over his shoulder and glowered at me. There is no way you haven't noticed the oddness of your body. It's surprising you haven't been killed on accident. True, even with us both managing it, the elementals are noting some sluggishness, which means we poured too much energy into you while healing. That can be fatal, you know, to you and the healer. I imagine healers charged you an arm and a leg for repeat visits. I flinched. That was true. How do you know? I have mana lines? Beyond the fact I cut you open to check? I shuddered and looked down at my body, unable to find signs of his exploration. You have aura burns in your mouth from spell work. My sunshine says you also have discoloration under your nails, which is common in spell swords. There's also the fact that the runes are active. We've both received the alarm that you tried to open your third eye. What else could you be? Violo laughed. This makes your situation all the more intriguing. Alright, I do want to see what the other choices give us, but I assume it's gonna kind of end up the same after. I don't think that Vivere will attack us with the other choices, but still. Give me a minute. Alright, let's stay quiet this time. I bit back any surprised noise and went stock still. Years of seeing the strangest shit imaginable also helped me keep my expression neutral. The tall man tilted his head at the display, stepping closer. He leaned in over the bed with ease, eyes tracing across me. I clenched my fists when that blade in his hands came near my flesh. The tip danced across my skin without cutting me.
Annoying.
How vexing. If only it were simple. If it were a bizarre organ, I could rip it out. If it were a silvered tongue, I could make it impossible for you to ever string words together again. If it were a physical talent, I could cripple you with ease. But no, it had to be something I can't take away from you. The tip of his dagger pressed against my throat. Something I'm not certain will persist or not even if I kill you and rip out your soul." He clicked his tongue in displeasure before standing up straight, tucking the dagger away.
Annoying.
Annoying. The most annoying guest we've had here. I tried to move my feet, only to discover that they were also chained together. The chain was just long enough I could shuffle around, but I would need to be careful to avoid falling. Tension kept the man's shoulders tight, despite the impassive look on his face. Some difference of opinion had to exist between the ship's attacker and this man. I hoped it wouldn't get me killed. The door opening shattered the tense silence. The ship's attacker skipped in, humming that same tune.
My sunshine.
Hello, my sunshine. Hello, guest. I'm glad to see you awake. The ship's attacker stopped at the edge of the bed. I'm also glad to see you didn't undo my work, sunshine. I expected a new skull fracture or a few cuts. I am not that childish, says the one who's pouting. The tall man glared at the smaller one. The small one sighed. My sunshine, we've been over this. I am aware. The shorter man pouted a bit himself. Later. We'll talk about this later. The tall man sighed and rolled his eyes. You're awake, which is good. Any problems with your vision? Odd spots? Shorter range? No, but I am gonna go back and get the other choice now. All right, let's greet Viv. I stared at the man, weighing my options. The chains on my wrist indicated that I was a prisoner of some sort. Yet, I sat in a fresh room instead of the cold floor of a dungeon. Something was up. I took a breath and swallowed a few times to make my throat less dry before speaking. Hello. Good afternoon? I squinted at the window, realizing that it wasn't sundown. The sky was a deep red color. He looks more pleased. A soft, surprised noise caught my attention. I looked back at the large man who blinked at me a few times. His impassive face was almost slack with shock. Morning? I cannot tell what time it is. You were right the first time. The shock turned into slight amusement while he tucked the dagger away. Good afternoon. Rather blasé for the situation at hand. Panicking won't do much for me, will it? You don't strike me as the type who gets off on people begging. Keen assertion, and mostly accurate. What do you think getting on my good side will do for you? I don't know. Depends on what kind of host you feel like being. Host? Am I a host or a warden? There's evidence for both, so I don't know. After all, I'm chained up like a prisoner, but I'm in a room like a guest. It's an odd situation to interpret. To my surprise, the man chuckled. That was surprisingly amusing. He stared at me intently. Maybe you'll be worth something after all. I did not know how to feel about the slight interest that flickered to life in his gaze. Any further odd conversation was cut off by the door to the room opening. The ship's attacker pranced in, tilting his head.
My sunshine.
Did you laugh, my sunshine? He raised a brow. Surprising, I know. Does this mean you're less upset with me? You are still in trouble. Damn. The smaller man sighed and pouted. You did this to yourself. I know. The shorter man sighed and turned to face me. All right, now I shall skip ahead. Welcome to Pario. You'll be staying with us for some time. Violo clapped his hands together and gave me a big smile. If it was meant to comfort me, it had the opposite effect. You see, you are quite the fascinating find. I'll skip further ahead. This makes your situation all the more intriguing. Your soul is willing to absorb any and all magic thrown at it. Telepathy, healing, illusions, who knows what else? This violates the laws of nature. Human souls are not supposed to be limitless. A human body will shatter if one pours too much energy into it. You still seem vulnerable to that. It'd be a shame if you died on accident. The way he said that clued me in that if it was by his hands, it wouldn't be an accident. Why is that interesting? Aren't I a mere defect? I need it. He moves forward so fast. Violo leaned in so quickly our foreheads almost collided. I need that power. I need that void. His voice was desperate and almost reverential. A fond smile crossed his face. And you're going to help me get it. After all, it's not like you can go anywhere else. Feel free to try if you want to. Vivir shrugged his shoulders. Now, that'd be fatal. The grin became sharper then. I'm quite the grump when things get in the way of my studies. But that won't be a problem, right? He leaned in close one more time. Behave for now. We'll figure out what to do with you after the experiment ends. I shuddered. My captivity in Sacrarium Pario had begun. No one hauled me into a cold room to cut me open. Violo and Vivir left after our initial conversation, ordering me to rest for now. Some part of me struggled with the idea of sleeping in such a dangerous location. The exhaustion of my past 2 days won that struggle. I woke up the next morning feeling a little better. No monster waited to drag me somewhere. At least an hour had passed with no sign of someone calling for me. I wasn't about to waste the opportunity to explore. The rules of this place were hardly defined, and I needed to push the limits to see what I could get away with. To my surprise, the door to my room didn't have a lock. It swung open into an old hallway. Much like my room, dust and overgrowth dominated the hall. Candles and magical light gave me enough light to see by. No spells flared to life and attacked me when I crossed the threshold. No monsters came roaring down the halls to capture me. I hesitated. This level of freedom could be a ploy to trick me into misbehaving. The weight of the chains on me helped me realize what it actually was. I was neither a threat nor a flight risk. Hells, I haven't even been able to bathe properly because of the length of the chains. Bathing in chains meant scrubbing myself down while struggling to maintain my balance. I had no magic, limited mobility, no boat off the island, and was powerless against living gods. They didn't need to lock me in a room. I had nowhere else to go. The realization tasted bitter. My insides churned with nervous energy. I'd been a child the last time I was this cornered. Ignoring the sick feeling in my stomach, I continued forward down the hallway. The stagnant air didn't budge beyond a mild increase in the floral smells. With no way to determine direction, random chance was my only option. I moved with purpose. Instinct had me pre-check any corners before rounding them. I clung to the shadows despite the effort being pointless. The architecture of the place reminded me of Crescia? In fact, Violo had muttered some words that sounded like cress. His Trotteau lacked much of an accent, but those words were distinct enough, given the approximate time of his imprisonment. Not Crescian architecture, Crescent Imperium architecture. I felt a bit stupid examining door frames, but I needed to know for sure. Sure enough, I found Imperia brass nails. The way they'd turned purple in the humidity confirmed it. I'd only ever seen these nails in museum cargo that I'd recovered from bandits. The weight of the history I stood inside of felt heavy as hell. I drew in a nervous breath. It also didn't spell anything good for me. The Crescent Imperium became Crescia after a coup against cruel tyrants. If he was from the Imperium of old, he was even more dangerous than I first thought. Some part of me regretted tuning out that babbling museum curator. He might have said something back then I could use now. My investigation ended when heavy thuds began to echo down the hall. Whatever the thing was, it was heavy and slow. It had more than 2 legs. As it grew closer, I could hear multiple moaning exhales, off rhythm with one another. Fear forced me into a tight crevice, obscuring myself with overgrowth. I held my breath and waited for the creature to pass. It was horrifying to look at. A mass of twisted and warped flesh ambled forward, with eerie precision. No feet to be seen. Dozens of arms acted as legs. Elongated fingers and palms slapped against the floor. It paused near me. The two strongest looking arms hit the ground and held the creature's long, twisted body up. Fused torsos creaked with its motions. The independent segments rotated, the arms attached to them reaching out. They stretched unnaturally long and padded around. The head seemed to be many heads fused together, leaving only the noses and mouths. Black and yellow teeth chattered between breaths. Crooked fingers brushed the overgrowth that separated it from me. I held my breath when some of those fingers began to poke around the area in front of me. The vines tangled around its hand, and it shook them off. The motion had the longest finger ending up less than an inch from my face. The creature paused completely. Then, that hand surged forward and grabbed me. My arm swung up to try and ward the creature off. Despite many of the arms looking thin, they batted away my attack and pulled me out of hiding. Its hands wrapped around my thrashing limbs with ease. The thing lifted me atop its back and began to walk with me. I waited to be devoured. I had nowhere else to look but at its ugly head. The mouths on it didn't look designed to tear flesh. The strength of its hands might allow it to rip me apart. It didn't. No, each motion while handling me remained firm yet careful. Something was up. I hung limp in the creature's grasp to conserve my energy. I'd need it. The creature navigated the space with expert precision. Even carrying my extra weight didn't make it stumble. I did my best to remember the path we took, noting down things I could use as reference points. We passed by more twisted creatures. Some were mostly human, two-legged, with their faces warped beyond recognition. Those ones had no arms. They hobbled about, holding buckets in their mouths. Others were disgusting displays of cobbled-together corpses. A few had no flesh at all and were bones moved by metal threads. It was yet another reason why these two didn't lock my door. They had constant security. Eventually, we approached a dark door that opened without being touched. The creature turned and tossed me through it. Alright, so I think I might leave this here because it's going to be a decently long video, probably well over an hour. And even though this is just a demo, I believe it goes all the way until the first week of our character's captivity. So I don't exactly know how long this is gonna be, but the game page says it's a few hours, and I believe that. So we are leaving this very fascinating visual novel here. And if you made it this far, I hope that you all enjoyed this video. And if you did like it, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more of me, but you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe. I upload videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, as well as extras and shorts randomly throughout the week. I also stream on Twitch. It's been fluctuating recently, but you know, if you follow me on social media, I do tend to tweet out when I go live. So if you want to see me live, check me out over on Twitch, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye!